Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another exquisite soiree. And this evening, we're going to delve into the processes of evolutionary transformation, expansion, and ultimately merging into oneness with the embodiment of our God self, our sphere of infinity, our eternity avatar, our golden body of creation itself. And so, if we can think of evolution this way, it's typically depicted as hierarchical, right? There's higher, there's lower, there's these directionalities that make it quite linear. And the way that evolution, expansion actually works is from the center out to the center. So in any given moment, we are either completely contracted, right? This is when we feel small, we feel tight, we feel like there's resistance and dissonance and a friction in our being, our embodiment. We feel density, our frame of awareness, what we can actually see becomes limited in these frequencies. So our thoughts will always match the current frequency that we are embodying, resonating, emanating. And so if we are in a more densified, contracted frequency, our thoughts will follow suit with that signature. Now, in again, any given moment, we can also be incredibly open, vast, expansionary in our enveloping awareness of self, of truth, of the oneness, of love. And when we're expanded, our frequency is elevated, it's highly coherent, it's resonant, it is that our vision, our self-recognition opens up and we begin to see and feel and recognize more of the truth of who we are, what has always already been right here, right now. And this works in manifesting too. Manifesting is simply this, the art of self-recognition, realizing in this infinite, grand, vast, eternal now moment, all potentials and possibilities already exist, have already been created, are already crystallized. Us becoming aware of them and resonating in both recognition and appreciation of those possibilities, which our true divine self and being is the ultimate possibility made manifest. In our self recognition, in our recognition of those possibilities, which are always deeply synergistic with who and what we are in truth, limitless love, beauty, freedom, bliss, prosperity, resources, wisdom, genius, all of this, like creative, artisanal capacity, it all exists in this octave, I call it the diamond octave, of supreme self recognition and ultimately enlightenment, which is simply knowing the actuality of all being one loving, benevolent, divine presence. And so in any moment, we are either contracted or we're expanded. And so we each uniquely tend to normalize at an octave. So if you can think of a flowering lotus, you think about the seed of life, and then you have the fruit of life, and then ultimately the tree of life, the flower of life. This is the geometric blueprint that evolution follows inside of our very own beingness. And so we may start as the seed of life. Our seed and our DNA contains the perfect divine blueprint of our grand becoming. We don't have to try to achieve ourselves, earn ourselves, become ourselves. Just like a flower, our ultimate potential is inevitable. We simply must allow ourselves to unfurl, blossom, and flower into it moment by moment by moment. So becoming aware of where we do hold contraction in the body and gracefully, gently opening ourselves in those spaces. So what happens is we begin as the seed, and then it begins to evolve, right? So we recognize, we start to become more aware of the fullness of our totality. And as we do that, the more that we concentrate in that space, our energetics, our awareness, our contemplations, our self-research and study and consciousness, we begin to normalize in a new vibrational set point, an octave of consciousness, which both transcends and includes the previous octave, meaning that what we experienced as the seed of life, we will still contain that information, that wisdom, that knowledge, that intelligence, that brilliancy and all of the frequencies it entails. And now that we have a new octave, a new vibrational set point of consciousness that we are normalizing and establishing, it will also include, so it will transcend and include the previous octave. So we quite literally are expanding and normalizing to hold and embody more and more of who and what we truly are. And again, it's all right here, right now. So this is people who have spontaneous awakening experiences and they never go back. They burst wide open and they stay there. Eckhart Tolle is a great example of this. His consciousness, he had a moment of intense density that caused him to let go of thought long enough that there was an opening, a space for the light of pure consciousness to pour through. And he made an internal decision to stay expanded into that field of pervasive presence and self-gnosis. And so this is available to all of us. So we can, what typically happens in our journey is we either choose our evolution, we flow seamlessly with it, so we can self-facilitate this, and I'll teach you how in just a moment. We can self-facilitate our own enlightenment, our own expansion and prolific flowering. We can be catalyzed into it by life, right? So when life starts sending us whispers, slow down, relax, go within, create space, let go. And we still keep with the hustle bustle, the busy, do, because we've normalized to a certain way of being. Life will introduce something to us, our own supreme being, because there's a call at a soul level that overwrites those kinds of activities. And that soul level call always wins. There's a deeper core intrinsic desire to know and be and embody thy true self. And so that will always win out. So then life will present us with circumstances that force us to do those things, to slow down, to be still, to be quiet, to listen, to create inner spaciousness, etc. So it can happen through a catalytic experience. And it can just also be very emergent. And this is when, typically when we are at a space of pervasive enlightenment and grace and pure beingness, there's a more organic and natural emergence that occurs moment to moment to moment. So if we are wishing to facilitate this, and I'm going to utilize the example of plant wisdom, because most people who engage with plant wisdom, especially if it's on a more frequent basis, are doing so because it gives them access to their own organic signature and most pure natural state of being as source energy. And so this is a way for them to access their own true state. And it typically it supports the relinquishment of veils. It allows us to drop in more deeply, feel more deeply, become more aware of a wider picture of what's already always been here all along. And we let our guard down. Essentially, there's a deeper a surrender, a letting go, a relinquishing into the now. These places that were tight and contracted and holding on, or our thoughts are, our mind is busy and our thoughts are racing. These sacred allies can support the veils to be relinquished. We're more apt to let them go. And then we have this glorious experience of our true nature. Now, we can self-facilitate this without any exogenous substances whatsoever. And the elegant simplicity is through creating spaces of serene solitude in nature, in your holy home temple, to drop into your sensuality and into your breath, emptying, quieting the mind, becoming more aware of your multi-sensory experience. So to drop beyond thought, to focalize and feel the sensation of your breath coursing through your holy body, through your being, through your circuitry, becoming aware of the nuanced sensations in your body. And your body contains infinite intelligence. It is your ultimate guiding light and compass. And so as you're breathing into your system, it will start to transmit intelligence to you. It will start to teach you about who and what you are. So now in our DNA, in our DNA helixes, there are coils of light information. When we are contracted and we're tight in the mind is so because the mind takes up inner space, right? So the fastest way to create inner space is to go beyond thought and breathe to expand ourselves in our body. So when we're contracted and tight, this light information stays coiled up, contracted and tight in our DNA. Now we know that light is information, and it is the information of superconscious intelligence. So it has been proven that when we relax, we open, we expand, we breathe, the DNA relaxes. It literally begins to release light information, superconscious revelations, epiphanies, self with a capital S awareness into our conscious mind. These are the moments that we experience as extraordinary creative flow of epiphany, of revelation, of ideas, of insights, the je ne sais quoi of life. We get so stoked and excited to be here in our creationary element and power in the present moment. We're literally being nourished from the inside by wisdom, by the wisdom of light intelligence. So the more that we intentionally cultivate these spaces or carve out spaces to give this to ourselves, the more we become filled with the light, the radiance, and the truth of all that we are. Again, I surrender myself at the altar of my divinity. That means the thinking mind. The thinking mind is primarily ego. And I typically don't like to utilize that term because our ego is what allows us to be individuations of source energy and our unique dynamism and majesty and glory, and be the fabulous expressions of that intelligence that we are. However, the key is to bring the ego into aligned coherence with the soul, with the spirit, with our own supreme being, so that it's operating in service to the goodness, the love, and the flourishing of all beings, of all life, the total self. So the ego is useful, and it's what allows us to be beautiful, individuated incarnations of pure divine source energy. And what we have as a humanity typically labeled the ego is the human thinking mind. It typically is usually, I'm not talking about pure consciousness, but the thinking mind is typically rooted in misperception and unconsciousness, in logic and analysis that inhibits the flow of pure intelligence from moving through. So the moment we go beyond the mind, we create space for a more supreme intelligence, divine logic to emerge versus mind, this mind logic, divine, pervasive mind logic. It operates from the intelligence of love. It's a completely different, inclusionary, enveloping, all-encompassing, supremely intelligent energy, and it emerges from a deeper seat within our being. And so so to relax, to open, to expand, to breathe, to get into our sensuality, into our body, to create space beyond the mind, and to feel our experience, to hear the sounds in nature, in our environment, the birds singing, the ocean waves gliding across the sand, the wind whispering the quintessence of spirit through the trees. We create that inner space, we start to hear the whispers, and then we don't require the catalyst. We become masters at following through on the subtle, on the nuanced, that is perpetually guiding us into a state of union, of oneness, of wholeness, of love, of supreme divine knowingness, beingness, and emanation of that intelligence in the world. So really coming out of the rigidity of the mind and into the sensuous exquisiteness of the body. And so what can happen? So, okay, first I'm going to give this example. So have you ever seen those vibration plates where they pour salt on the table and then they hook it up to electrodes? And then as they amplify the frequency hertz, the design, whatever step point that design was in, so we'll say this is your current state of evolutionary embodiment, all that you have known and all that is familiar up to this point, the minute that those frequency hertz are raised, that design gets shaken up, that salt on the table, and then it recalibrates to a new, more expansionary, rich configuration. This is exactly what's happening in the blueprint of our body, in our mind, in our soul, in our spirit, in our actual sentient architecture in our body. And so when these transformations are happening, the most glorious thing we can give to ourselves is the grace of letting go of thinking about it, trying to figure it out, trying to get back to what once was and what was familiar, because we see this happen a lot too. I got to get back to my flow. I got to get back to what was working. I got to get back to what I know. The reality is, once a sequence like that is activated in your evolution, an actual genetic sequence, an epigenetic sequence, you're not going back. You can't unsee what is, you're not. You're going to continue to expand. So the most glorious thing that you can do for yourself is to release into it, to surrender into it, to turn off the mind so that the software and the hardware of the body, which is a super intelligent supercomputer, can actually calibrate to the new expanse of awareness and intelligence. And it does that most efficiently when the mind is out of the way. So this is akin to turning off a computer when we're updating the software. Everything is off, it's rebooting itself. It's the same thing with our bodies. The mind is off. Now there's inner space for the organic self-organizing intelligence of the body to do what it does without the intervention of the mind. We try to intervene and force our own expansion, our own evolution. It does not work this way. We've got to actually relinquish the mind, get out of our own way, so to speak, so that the self-organizing intelligence of infinity that lives within us can do what it does. We're not thinking about our heart beating. There's trillions of functions that are occurring in every second of our lives in our body that we're not even aware of. It does not require the intervention of the conscious mind. And unless the superconscious mind is lovingly blessing up on those processes, intervention of the mind always delays, inhibits, and kind of thwarts that process and makes it a lot more challenging and difficult than it needs to be, or that it has to be. So if we release into it, okay, there's clearly a transformation taking place. I'm expanding, I'm evolving. There's new awareness, new intelligence. This is uncharted territory. It's new, it's novel, it's unfamiliar to me. That can feel a little bit scary. But if I keep holding on to this thing over here, it just actually intensifies it. So release into it. And the more quickly that you can release into that process and into the grace, again, get into the body, out of the head, into the body, into your senses. Come out of your mind and into your senses. You will actually come to your senses a lot more quickly. The calibration, the transformation will unfold itself at hyper elegant speed. Now, if the mind is intervening, you can see how that creates friction, tension, dissonance, discord in the process that's already organically designed to self-organize of its own accord, naturally, organically. We just have to let it happen. And then, and if you've experienced any profound awakenings or just even simple awakenings in your life or any degree of transformation, which you have, you're here watching this video, then you know that there comes a moment in time after you're resting into allowing space for that recalibration to happen, for the software and the hardware to update, for the whole system to recalibrate. Even more magnificent light, beauty, joviality, positivity emerges, like whole new echelons of creative ideas and epiphanies and things that you wish to architect and construct and create in this world. And you're fueled from a full chalice because you actually let that update take place. And so this is an organic process. Again, it's encoded in the seed of our DNA blueprint. Our supreme potential is already encoded. We simply have to allow it without attempting to intervene in that process. And the more that we create the inner spaciousness, the more elegant the journey unfolds for us. And so we don't require these kind of like intense catalytic experiences. And so balancing that with your daily life and your dance of life. And another piece that is wishing to come through in here. Just one moment, what was it? Yeah, so I shared something recently, and it was expansion is exquisitely simple as being, feeling, and breathing. Empty yourself, and you will be filled with the treasure house of eternity. When we empty ourselves of our inner content, that which is generated by the thinking mind, the supreme and immaculate light intelligence of our divinity begins to emerge unencumbered. And that's really the movement. The more masterful we become at that, okay, I'm going to go meditate. I'm going to go empty my mind. I'm going to sit in solitude. I'm going to connect more richly to my sensuality. This is flow. When we're flowing, if you've ever been in the most like exquisite, sensuous dance flow with another being, nobody's thinking. When you are making love, you're not thinking, you're present to the quintessential movements of soul, of spirit, of essence, dancing in a space of pure love. It's such a felt, experiential unfoldment and interweaving that is taking place. And this is our optimal space to operate from in life, from pure essence. And you can feel in your being where quintessence is within you, what it sounds like, what it feels like, how it speaks, how it communes with the heart of eternity. It's a completely different access point when and we know when we're in the rigidity of the mind because it doesn't feel that great in the body. And even if it is like we've grown accustomed to operating in that way, it can feel like, whoa, this is like really new pioneering terrain for my being to like come out of this space that I have grown so used to and allow something greater to emerge. But this something greater is something that I actually deeply wish for in my soul and have called for, whether spoken or unspoken, in a much more deep way. And that's why the transformation is here. So I would welcome each of us to always embrace that. When you know it's happening, you know it's happening. Please don't resist it. Allow it, because what's coming is something so much more vivid, elucidating, enlivening, grand, creationary, and spectacular in all the ways. And again, we can self-facilitate this by constructing these spaces of sweet solitude and grace and breath and poetry and movement and dance and sensuality into each and every day, and balancing that with all of the other aspects of our beautiful, holy life experience. So I trust that this served you tremendously. Please feel free if you have any questions or any spaces you would love me to elaborate upon. I always do these videos and I think about all the threads that I could have, each one of these could be its own micro curriculum that I could share, all these nuances and awarenesses. So again, in any moment, we're either contracted or we're opened into the allness. So the key is to stay opened into the allness and to walk and dance and move through life in this way. And having these really balanced, exquisite, simple, sacred ceremonial rituals will bring us right there. And it feels good and it's fun and it's serene and it's delicious. And we're back basking in the oneness of heaven that is love. So nourish yourself in this way, please. I love you all so incredibly much. And we will soiree again soon. Mwah.